Okay, please do not forget we will be, because many people have said, we should take this beyond a conversation. We have gone beyond that. We have strategic sessions which will kick off shortly, and this covers various areas of our national life. You get into that, this will not be played in public space. These are strategic sessions, and people will develop plans of actions, all right, or action plans going forward in terms of, so you can go to our website, insightsforliving.org/breakout sessions. Quickly do that now and register for the one that has to do with that which you are doing. And from there, action plans will take off. All right. Where we're going to do this now is that we have two more people, Pastor Tunde Bakari and Anne-Marie Slaughter. Anne-Marie Slaughter, I will introduce her. She's an American international lawyer, a foreign policy analyst, and a political scientist and public commentator. Currently, Anne-Marie Slaughter is the CEO of New America, a think tank, action tank, dedicated to renewing the promise of America, bringing people closer to its nation's highest ideals. And so, some of these skills she brings to this. She's also a Bert G. Kester 1966 University Professor Emeritus of Politics and International Affairs at Princeton University. From 2009 to 2011, she served as Director of Policy Planning for the United States Department of State, the first woman ever to hold that position. Upon leaving the State Department, she received the Secretary's Distinguished Service Award for her work leading on diplomacy development review, as well as meritorious service awards from the U.S. Aid and Supreme Allied Commander for Europe. Prior to her government service, Dr. Slaughter was the Dean of Princeton University's School of Public and International Affairs. She's a professor of international foreign and comparative law at the Harvard Law. She was at Harvard Law School from 1994 to 2002.
Hello, Platform Nigeria. I am so pleased to be back with you, and particularly to celebrate and to honor Nigeria's 60th anniversary. I'm going to talk to you about leadership, individual leadership, organizational leadership, and global leadership for the next 60 years. I have some slides which I would like to share with you, so give me a second while I share my screen. Let us start with a definition of leadership. This is my favorite definition. It's from Nanurl Cohen, who was the president of Wellesley College and Duke University, both in the United States, and is a political theorist who has thought deeply about leadership. And her definition is that leaders determine or clarify goals for a group of individuals and bring together the energies of the members of that group to accomplish those goals. What I love about this definition is that she doesn't make any mention of title, of being the prime minister or the CEO or the chief. Indeed, she doesn't talk about being at the head of an organization or a group at all. This definition could apply to any member of any group who, in a particular situation, is the person who determines or clarifies the goals of that group and then brings together the energies so that of group members so that they in fact accomplish the goals. So it is a very broad definition, and it is also, I think, a horizontal definition, and I will come back to both of those points. So now I want to talk about what leaders actually do, because to say that a leader determines or clarifies the goals of a group actually hides many more specific actions if you think about being a leader. How do you determine those goals? How do you clarify those goals? Well, the first thing you do, of course, is you make decisions. If the leader is talking to the members of that group, as if I were talking to all of you, I would ask you for your opinions. We would like all those opinions to coincide or to agree, but of course they typically do not. And at some point, the leader has to say something like, well, I think I hear that most people want to take this course of action. So you have to make the decision, even if you know everyone does not agree with it. You have to devise and implement a strategy. So you can certainly mobilize the energies of the group, but how are they going to actually accomplish that goal? You are the one who has to devise the strategy with input and make sure people implement it. You have to compromise when you are thinking about what that goal is and you are making that decision. It may well not be the goal that you particularly want. It may be a compromise among others. You have to listen to proposals or petitions from others. Now, this sounds like a traditional tribal chief or a king where people come and they ask you for things and you have to say yes or no or make a decision. So this is something that is, I think, more traditionally how we think about leadership. You absolutely have to adjudicate conflict. The leader is often the judge. And I always tell people that if you want everyone to like you, you are not ready to be a leader because you will have to make decisions and some people will be disappointed because of those decisions. You have to assemble resources and to deploy incentives. That means that you're the one who provides the money or gives somebody the ability to hire someone. Or, of course, if you are the head of a country, you are the one to decide how you are going to tax your people or raise the funds. And certainly then you have to create the incentives for people to join in the strategy that they've agreed on. This one's particularly important. You have to give voice to vision. Some leaders are better at the visionary side of leadership, the inspirational side. I am somebody who likes to think of the big picture and to inspire people and energize them. Other leaders are much better at being very, very detailed and getting the job done. But at some point, a leader, again, whether a leader in a group, in an organization, or the leader of a country, or indeed the leader of the United Nations, has to actually give voice to a larger vision, one that gives people meaning, purpose, and hope. And a good leader has to know when to ask for counsel, something that is often hard for leaders to realize and took me a number of years to ask others and really listen to what they say. And then, of course, also to issue statements in difficult situations where you want to take the counsel of many people. You want to make that decision and issue a statement. And finally, you have to be able to take a stand. You have to decide something. You have to stand on your decision. You have to be fully prepared for many people not to like what you've decided, to oppose you. You want to be civil, but you want to stand on your principles or your decision. So that's a subset, but a pretty complete set of the actions that leaders take when they are, in fact, doing the determining or clarifying the goals of a group and mobilizing the energies of that group to accomplish those goals. So now I want to talk about how leaders lead. And I want to start with positions of power. Where are you when you do all those things that we just talked about that are necessary for a leader to do? So you might think about your organization or your country or your family as a ladder. And if you are a leader in an organization that is like a ladder, then you have to lead from the top. Being in the center of the ladder means you have someone above you and someone below you, and you are not in a position then to lead. So you can think about any organization as a ladder, and then you have to get to the top. And we indeed talk about climbing the ladder of your career. But you can also think about your relationships with the people around you in again, an organization, a family, a country, much more as a web, much flatter, much more horizontal, where you are connected to a lot of other people, but the way you are connected is not one above you and one below you, but you are all networked together. To exercise power in a web, you have to be at the center. So there is no top. And indeed, the top of a ladder, if you put the ladder down, would be the outside of the web. And the center of the web, which is the position of power, would be the middle of the ladder. So they're very different ways of thinking about power and thinking about organizations. Depending on where you are, as you think about your position from which you lead, you do different things. So here we come to styles of leadership, but really modes of leadership. Again, remember our basic definition. You determine or clarify the goals of a group of people, and you mobilize the energies of the individuals in that group to accomplish those goals. So the first question you should ask yourself as a leader, and the first question you should ask when you are being led, when you are evaluating a leader, is do you do those things, the determining and clarifying of goals and mobilizing? Do you do those things by telling people or asking people? If you do those things by telling people what to do, which is typically how you do it if you are in a hierarchy, you're the top of the ladder, you have power over all those people. You typically lead through command and control. You tell them what to do. You are able to control what they do by holding them accountable. If you're in an organization, you fire them if they didn't do something. If you are in a country, you're running a country the same way. If you are a country acting with other countries and they don't do what you want, you punish them in some way. So that's command and control. And that way of leading is telling. But you can equally determine or clarify the goals of a group of individuals by asking them the right kinds of questions, by listening to their answers, and then by stating a consensus. Now, you're still deciding, you are still exercising power. This is not a simply let's all talk and we never reach a decision. You're the leader. You have to decide and decide on the strategy and resolve conflict, all those things. But you're doing it from the center of the web. So when you are leading from the center, you don't have power over people. You have power with people through the ways you are connected. And you can exercise that power by connecting someone on one side of the web to another side of the web, by deciding who should be connected and for what purpose. And then you can catalyze action. So because you are connected to everyone, you can take a smaller group of the people in the web and connect them, and then give them the idea and the resources to actually take action. So command and control versus connect and catalyze, telling people versus asking people. This is also, this style of leadership is directly connected to the type of power you have. So command and control, the power that comes from being at the top of a ladder, that's old power. That's the traditional way we thought about power. Indeed, power is making somebody do something they otherwise don't want to. But when we're talking about power in the web, the power of connecting and catalyzing, that is a form of new power. And I recommend this book, New Power, and I'll describe the difference between these kinds of power. So old power, this is in their words, works like a currency. It is held by a few people. So think about money that is finite and you hold it and by a few people. Once you have it, you guard it jealously. It is closed, inaccessible, and leader driven. It downloads and it captures. So it is a very tightly held power. New power operates not like a currency, but like a current. So think about an electrical current. It is made by many people, not held by a few, but made by many. It is open, it is participatory, it is peer-driven. You upload ideas and you distribute them, so you don't download something and hold it. You upload it. If you think about the way the internet works, you spread it. The goal of new power is not to hoard it, but to channel it. So again, if you're sitting at the center of that web, you want to channel who's getting connected and how and who gets the information they need. But the idea is power with others. So obviously, if you think about social movements, that is power with. So depending what kind of power you have and depending where you are, in fact, you are exercising that power, from which position you are exercising that power, you will lead differently. You will lead through command and control or through, again, connecting and catalyzing. So that's a way of thinking about leadership that applies to anyone, anywhere, anytime. You can ask yourself, are you the person who is going to clarify or determine goals for a group of people, who's going to mobilize the energies of that group to achieve those goals, who will be taking all those different actions we talked about, and who will be doing that in a vertical way from the top of the ladder or in a horizontal way from the center of the web. And I will say we are living in a very horizontal time. Lots of traditional hierarchies are falling down. People like me who run organizations with many young people in those organizations are continually surprised by how much they want to participate in making decisions for the organization, how much they reject traditional hierarchies. And people who are used to being able to publish on a blog or to send out what they think on social media, all of the traditional gatekeepers, the ways power was closed and hoarded, those ways have been exploded often by the internet. So we are in a more horizontal world, and leading from the center is often necessary. But I want to talk a little bit about what that means globally. And I want you to think about Nigeria and then Africa as being in the world. And there are two ways of thinking about the world. One is the chessboard and one is the web. This is an example of the chessboard. This is a picture of the United Nations Security Council where you have the 5 permanent members. We're looking here at the ambassador for the United States and the ambassador for Russia. That is the world of the chessboard. It is the world of lots of countries, little squares, little flags, and they all play games of strategy with one another. That's the traditional way we think about the world. The world of the web looks like this. You might also take a picture of the internet, and it would be a world of the web. It is a world of infinite connections, very densely concentrated in some parts of the world, less concentrated in other parts of the world. But it's a web world, a world of networks, and you have to lead very differently in that world. If you are leading, and now let's think if you are the leader of a country or the leader of a business or a civic organization, if you want to solve global problems, you don't have the ability to order a policy, to legislate and insist that something be carried out, to enter into a treaty. What you have the power to mobilize others with you, and again, exercising new power, come together to solve that problem. And the ways you do that are 5. We've talked about a couple of them, but I want you to think more generally about how you lead in a network. First, you clarify the goals of everyone in the network. So imagine your social network. You have 6 people. You all want to go to dinner. You want to figure out what you're doing for an evening. Some people want to go to dinner. Some people want to go to a movie. The first thing you do is clarify the goal, and that's exactly where we started with leadership. Then you have to curate your network. I mean, if some people absolutely want to go to a movie and you've decided that really the goal of the majority of the group is to go to dinner, well, some of those people get left out. You don't always connect everyone. You connect the people who share goals. And then you connect them in a very active way. This is not enough to send an email to 2 people or to introduce them in some way. You have to actively be in touch with them and make sure they are connected to one another, that they understand why they are connected, that you, again, deconflict any problems they might have in their relationship between them. You might judge a dispute that they have. You are actively connecting them. And if the bigger your network, the more work you have to do in making sure they are all actively connected. You have to cultivate their power, because in a network, you cannot order people to do things. You have to inspire them. You have to mobilize them. That means you want them to have their own ideas, and you want those ideas to be generally in line with the goals of the network as a whole. So you have to cultivate your relationship with that person, but you have to cultivate their power and ability to exercise, to implement the goals of the network. And finally, again, you have to catalyze action. So here, if you're thinking about building a regional network, a global network, if we think of examples, we can think about the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. And indeed, we may need a global alliance for a COVID vaccine. That is going to involve governments and international organizations and NGOs and corporations and the national and local governments. You're going to have to create a network, and you're going to have to do all these things to make the network work. All right, we are almost at time for questions and answers, and we can talk further about any of these points. But I want to end by getting you to think about leadership, not just in terms of old power and new power, the ladder and the web, command and control versus connect and catalyze, but in terms of identities. I am a leader. I am also a woman. Many people argue that women lead differently, that we are more collaborative, that we are more open, that we are warmer. The reason I would tell you about connecting and catalyzing is that I'm uncomfortable with command and control. And many people think that is a function of our personalities as women. I am certain that as Africans, as Nigerians, you may have encountered situations, at least globally, where certain traits are ascribed to you, and that people might say on the global stage, African leaders lead differently than European leaders or Asian leaders. And in the United States, this comes up as a question of if you are African American or if you are Black, because not all Blacks in the United States are of African descent, although they are originally, but do African Americans have a different style of leadership? And you could ask the same question of any category that you happen to fall in. I think it's important to ask this question, again, for yourself individually, in your organization, or countries, because I actually do not believe that we have biologically determined styles of leadership. I do not think that whether you are a man or a woman, or whether you come from one culture or another, means that you automatically lead differently. Certainly, there are different cultural norms. In the United States, it is important to be very forceful and bold and confident in your leadership. Often Asian leaders, if you think about Japan, you would be much more ready to apologize. So, of course, there are cultural differences. But I think the biggest differences in leadership come from how you have been accustomed to exercising power. So if you are a group who is a minority group or oppressed in some way, you often do not have the ability to exercise power directly. Women are very rarely, traditionally, at the head of organizations, so they couldn't exercise command and control. And similarly, if African countries were colonies for a long period of time, as the United States was, that's a style of leadership that would not allow leaders to be as bold and confident as they might want to be. So in that setting, often we lead by connecting to others, by mobilizing energy, but more quietly. So I do think it matters where your power comes from and how you have been allowed to use it in the past, and that will help determine styles of leadership. But I would put to you, and it's a good note to end on, that, for instance, the way Nigerians lead individually in your organizations, in your government, and on the global stage is much more a function of how much power you have, where that power comes from, and how you are best able to determine or clarify the goals of a group of people or a group of member states and mobilize their energies to accomplish those goals. The last thing I will say, though, is you will not just need other countries. You will need many other actors, businesses and NGOs, mayors and governors, educational leaders. And to mobilize that kind of power, you're often leading from the networked world. So thank you very much, and I look forward to answering your questions.